Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. Well, we're getting a temporary break from the extreme heat, so I've got my windows open, so hopefully the background traffic won't distract you too much. So what I'm planning to do today is a nice little project that's actually great for kids to do as well. This project won't take too long, but it's great to do it as a little summertime thing. So what I thought I would do is, it's going to be a mixture of painting and some collage. Not so much collage as in the traditional layering of collage, but gluing some papers on. My goal is to create some type of mosaic piece with little blocks on here and different flowers. And you can do this project 10 times and you'll get 10 different results. So what I have here is I have a piece of mixed media paper. It's roughly about 140 pounds. It might be a little bit thicker than that. Now on this paper there's a slightly smooth side and a slightly rough side. For this particular project it makes absolutely no difference on the side that you use. Okay, and I'm also working on my glass palette with a sheet of gray palette paper underneath. First of all, it'll cut out the brightness from the reflection of the studio lights, but it also kind of helps me judge the values of my paint. And values are the lightness and darkness of a color. I'm not going to get into color theory too much in this, but I am going to do a little bit of comparison when it comes to making up the paints. So with the piece of paper here, before I even paint it, I need to decide what color I want the actual frame piece to be. So just to give you an idea of where I'm going with this, is what I'm looking at doing. I'm actually not going to use these pieces, but this is just the best way that I can explain it, is picture a piece of paper with these little blocks on it. And these little blocks, all they are cutouts from background sheets that I've done, and I have all the videos on how to make all these background sheets on my website at artplace.ca, which are free for viewing. So the idea is to have all these little blocks, and on these blocks is that I'm going to apply a glaze of color on these blocks, and then put another block on top of this, and then paint some little flowers. Okay, so now this is a really great time. If you've been following me for a while and working on journal pages and stuff like that, sometimes there are pieces of art that you do. Now I'm talking strictly the acrylic part, acrylic, watercolor, gouache, all that stuff, not the oil part, that you may not like the pieces that you've done. You can cut them up into little squares and repurpose your, what I call maybe junk art. Okay, and I know art is junk, but some pieces that you don't like. So within this, then basically from here, let me just scooch over. Then from here, I'll just turn this around the other way, and then have a little block here, okay, and then a little flower inside. Okay. Now, what color do I want the back? And this is very important that you determine this up front, because what I want is I want complementary colors between the background and the foreground. Contrasting and complementary, two different things. Black and white are contrasting, but complementary means if I want to use an orange square, I could actually use a bluish background. They're complementary colors on the color wheel. Okay, and side by side they naturally go very well together. They really make each other stand out. So to keep it simple, I'm thinking about, to make the flowers pop, I can either make the flowers darker, the inside square lighter, then this darker, than this lighter. So it'll be light, dark, light, dark. Okay? So I think what I want to do is I want to make my flowers dark. So if I make my flowers dark, this needs to be light, this needs to be dark, and then this needs to be light. Okay? So we'll start off with a lighter background. Okay, so with a lighter background, now today there's a cold front coming in, which means we are set for some thunderstorms, and we can really use the rain. But I can think of today, with how beautiful it is, a beautiful blue sky. Well, I'm not going to use the typical ultramarine blue with white, because ultramarine blue by itself for a sky is a little bit dark, and I really don't want to add white because I want to make it the actual wash of color on here transparent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Traditions paint Cerulean Blue. Now Cerulean Blue is an amazing pigment to use for seascapes. But because it has a little bit of green in it, it actually makes a nice color for a sky. I'm not painting a typical sky. I'm going to actually put in a wash in here. In order to do the wash, because Cerulean Blue is opaque, and everything's on the label, because it's opaque, I'm going to mix it up with watercolor medium, which will make a beautiful transparent mixture. Now the watercolor medium is also the Traditions lines made by DecoArt, and it's amazing. That way you don't have to buy a separate line of paint. So with that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started. Where is my foam brush? Oh, there it is. And I'm just going to use a foam brush to apply paint to the smaller squares. Okay, so nothing fancy on that. I'm going to use a old paint scraper, or not paint scraper. This is house siding samples. You get the big box stores. We're looking at some siding for the house, so just one of these that'll scrape the paint. A big brush to apply medium. Oh, there's water. Apply medium to the page, and some smaller brushes to paint the flowers. And I will go over the paints later. I can't go over the paint colors I'm going to use right now because I don't know how this is going to transform. Okay, so before I even show you some sample pieces for the little squares, let's paint this. Okay, so what I did is I put some paper towel here just to tilt this up a little bit so the glare won't be as bad. Okay, shake up the medium. I'll just put that right here. And I'm actually going to use a little bit more than that. Oh, we have the grass cutters outside, cutting all the dried, the dried grass. Now, roughly equal parts. Now, with this here, you need to spend some time and really mix this up with a palette knife. And this is what makes your acrylic paints similar to watercolors. Very, very nice and soupy. This is what I call a juicy paint. It's luscious. And you got to make sure you really mix it up because you've got to get that watercolor medium inside all the paint particles. Otherwise it will not dry evenly. Now with this as well, now everybody's different. I also will take water, and depending on what I'm painting, I can add water to this. You can also add extender to this as well to reconstitute the paint. But what I like to do is I will actually dampen my mixed media paper first because it'll make it even more transparent. Okay, so that's a really, really nice mixture to this. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside. And from here, all I'm going to do is just drag my paint scraper into the paint. Okay. Now, the piece of mixed media paper that I have here is roughly 10 by 11. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to move this aside. It doesn't really matter what size it is because I'm going to be cutting it down anyways. Now, let me just basically back this up and spray the paper. Nothing fancy. Okay? And I'm also not going to evenly distribute the water. I want it uneven. Now the paper will start to curl. This is the grain of the paper. Will start to curl a little bit. Doesn't matter because by the time I finish putting the paint on, what you don't want is you don't want an even perfect application of paint. You want the paint to be kind of rough. I'm going to be showing you a little bit all these background watercolor sample pieces that I have. This is extra pieces from what I've cut off for paintings, and you know, just by tilting paper. Okay, see how that's really. Now this is mixed media paper. The other stuff is watercolor paper. So just do that, and this is all you're doing. You're not going for complete application. Don't forget. Where you've got some paint ridges, that's fine. You have some lines going there. Okay. Now with this, I'm going to take my heat gun just to get the top layer, sorry, the thin layer dried. And I'm just looking at it. I'm kind of moving my body side to side just so I can see where it's actually drying. It will take a little bit longer for it to dry because I've actually wet the mixed media paper. Now, I typically would do this off camera, but I want you to see basically what happens is as you start to dry, basically the shine disappears as well. Okay, I want to get these thin parts here dry. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some more paint here. Now I'm going to drip this. I'm going to drip this on here. And depending on which way you want your piece to be, okay, then you're going to add water and then tilt it. Almost like a dripping effect. So I'm putting most of it on this section. Okay, I'm going to turn this way. Okay, now I'm going to tilt it slightly upwards and spray. Okay, and then tilt. You get all these beautiful drip marks. It's still not quite enough. I'm just going to put a little bit more water in there. With all the studio lights, the paint tends to dry fairly quickly. There we go. Get all these nice drips and lines going like this. I love that. I'm getting all this stuff happening. It creates all this random and as you just keep moving it, this becomes softer and softer and softer. Now I want to try to get some in this corner, so I'm going to kind of tilt this like this. There we go. Let's get a little bit more here. That's actually some really nice effects right here. Let me get something happening here. And just kind of guide. And as you're doing this, what's happening here on this side here will dry. There we go. Try to make it find a new path. So all you're doing is just dripping, dripping, dripping. Look at that. Oh, that is just absolutely beautiful. There we go. Now from this here, you can also take a heat gun to it. What you have to be careful of though is when you take a heat gun to this much paint is that you may, or this much of a dampened surface, what you may end up doing is putting the heat gun so close to the paper that it will, you may burn it. Okay. If you not to lose this, you're best to let this dry naturally. Okay, you're best to let this dry naturally, but what you can also do if you have your heat gun and you can actually move the paint a little bit. Don't put the heat gun too close for too long. Okay, you can actually move some of the water into a different direction. Okay, you can do it with a straw. If you have an air gun, or with a can of compressed air, that'll work too. So you can see I'm just kind of moving it around and drying it. And what you can do too, now if you have the time, what you can do is with your surface being wet like this, let it get just damp, okay, but still wet, but not as wet as the running water. throw on some rock salt on it and then let it sit for a few hours, and then you'll have some other nice effects with this. I don't want to get the background too complicated though, because I want to focus on the flowers. Okay. Now, so I've got all this extra water. I don't know if you can see that, this extra water in here. What you can do to add more texture. I want a lot of texture in my piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some paper towel. Now this is the Scott paper towel that's very, very heavily textured. And I'm just going to lightly put that on there. And let it randomly pick up some pieces. As the paper towel kind of settles. I'm not going to put my hand, I actually probably could put my hand in there. But let it randomly, okay, unplanned, let it absorb the water as it goes. See how it's just starting to and lift that up. Creates a little bit of nice texture there. I'm going to fold that in half. Now while that absorbs some water, I'm going to go and get a stamp and try something. Okay, just lift that off. Oh, look at that. I don't know if you can actually see that beautiful texture there. I'll stay on this close up. Now, it's still damp. Now, I've got these little handmade stamps that I've got here. I'm going to do videos on these as well. I'm going to go right here. Now, this is a reverse image stamp. So where the little flowers are, basically, when traditionally when I do block printing, these will not transfer. It's everything on the outside. So if I push that on there, let's see what happens. Ooh, got a little indication. The paper is really, really textured. Let me try something else. Oh, our newspaper's here. Let's see. I've got the bottom of an old flip-flop. Let's see. I like that line there. Let's see what happens when I do that. Nothing. Okay. How about this one? This is the look of a pomegranate. The paper is a little... Yeah, the paper is a little dry now for this. Okay, I've got all these different things that I've made up. Let's try... let's see, right in here. Oh, that made a nice texture right there. So it's just a matter of just getting all these different things. The bottom of a floor tile. That's what I use as my base. No, that didn't work. Let's try here. Oh, that worked. Look at that. Just to give it some texture. This also helps dry the piece as well. Let's see if I can do something in here. Oops. The little flower here. And that's a little wet now. Do that on the back side. Okay. So I got a few little doodads in here. I love that. I really like this. Okay. Now this is almost all the water is gone from this. So what I can do now is I can use the paper towel, clean side, and now just start blotting. And this is, for me, this is really just to accelerate the drying time. I'm not really picking up a heck of a lot of paint. And as the paint starts to, moisture starts to dry out, evaporate out of the paint surface, your paper will flatten out. Okay, I'm going to take the heat gun to this one more time. Only because I need to glue down the little cardboard papers, so I just want to help speed up the drying time. And then between the time that I leave this to cutting the papers down, because I have to put glue on this, medium on this, I don't want to disturb the pattern that I have. Alright. Now, what I'm going to do now is clean up my palette, and when we come back, we'll start working on our squares. Okay, so while the other piece is drying, I've got my paper cutter here. Now, if you don't have a paper cutter, scissors are fine. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now, you can just use basically any type of heavy cardstock. This is 140-pound watercolor paper. If you don't have any pre-painted pieces to use, you can just use this and just slap on some color, similar to what I did for the background, but just used a different color scheme. Okay, scrape the paint on, doesn't matter. Okay, but what I have is I've got all these are little, this was actually a full background sheet similar to this. I'll get to this in a second, and I just cut it up. This was an art experiment. I'm constantly doing art experiments with mediums and paint and technique. And what this was pastel powder mixed with gesso, and then medium, and then I scrape pastel dust on top of it. And I will be doing a video. This one I did not do a video on because at that time all the air conditioners were on, the fans were on, and anytime you have any movement in the air, you cannot scrape dust with a dry media because you may run the risk of inhaling it. Okay, so these were full sheets of 22 by 30 sheets of watercolor paper that I actually painted, and I pre-painted the sheets full size in order to prepare them for an artist journal that I use for quick studies of people portraits. And these are pieces that leftover pieces that are cut out. And what I do is I never throw this stuff away. All I did was I just punched an eyelet through, put a binder ring on it, and then I've got all this stuff to work from. And these are the smaller pieces. I did the same thing. Okay, so these are now for the bigger squares that we're going to use. So I can use something like this. Okay, it doesn't matter if I use some of this and some of this and some of this. It doesn't matter. Okay, I also have all these backgrounds that I did. This is, again, a lot of these are on the website for videos that I've done. This was all art experiments and preparing backgrounds. These videos are free to watch on the website, so I can also use these. And this was simply a Canson book that I picked up, and it was just easier to hold the papers. It didn't last very long. I ripped that spine out of there, and I like this journal because the pages were perforated. It doesn't matter. Okay, I probably will never go to that book again for the purpose of just pre-painting backgrounds. I'll just go to straight watercolor paper because it's cheaper. But if you prefer to keep everything into a manufactured journal, the Canson Mixed Media Journal is a really, really good choice because the pages are very, very strong and they are perforated. So with this, I can go through and I can go on and choose. Now, what I'm looking for my actual large card is something with a lot of texture. Something with a lot of texture to make it like stand out. Now, you have what's called visual texture, and this is visual texture. You know that there's paint on top of the background. You can feel it too. Okay, I'm looking for something with a lot of heavy texture, but this is kind of busy. So as I go through all these pieces, okay, this is actually quite beautiful as well. This was done with, I think this one was done by rubbing alcohol on the piece, which got these nice spots. Okay, I'm liking that. This here was pre-painted with what looks like is a very transparent wash of raw sienna. Let that dry, and then I collaged a sheet. No, sorry, I lied. Gesso first. Really rough gesso. Let it dry. Medium on this. Tissue paper. I scrunched it up. Then a wash of raw sienna. That's what that looks like, and I like that texture. I'm going to hold that one aside. So as you go through, and this is a little bit shiny. This has got a full layer of medium on this. As I go through, I can just basically choose what I want. And remember that although the background is blue, I want something probably on the orangey yellow side to make it contrasting and complementary. But you can also, we're going to layer some paint on that as a wash. So, this would have made a nice background. Okay, so you just kind of flip through and pick a page that you really like. Okay, and I think I'm going to use this one because I like the tissue paper effect. Okay, And I don't know if I have this one on video, but like I said, he's just the surface gesso roughly applied, and that video how applying the gesso for texture is on the website. Let it dry. Put medium, like decoupage, medium, the matte medium, which is a fantastic way to collage and seal and act as a glue all over the thing. Tissue paper on this. Okay, when I put the tissue paper on, spray it so you can move it around and not tear it. If you tear it, who cares? Kind of move it around here. Okay, you can even put wax paper on your tissue paper so your hands don't get all gummy. Okay, kind of smush it around. Let that dry. Okay, slightly. Put more medium on top. And then let that dry, and then a wash of raw sienna. It depends on how you want to do it, but there's a lot of ideas on the website. So I'm going to use that. Now I need to cut my little squares. So I'm going to cut them. First of all, let me get rid of this thing right here. Get rid of that. How big do I want to make these? Let me try with 2.5-inch squares. Again, you don't have to have a cutter for this. This is really thick. You don't have to have a cutter for this. You can use scissors, just measure. Okay, just gonna roughly make these about 2.5 inches square. Use scissors if you want. This is quite thick. This is also a bit bigger, it doesn't matter. Oops, that didn't finish. Okay. This is not terribly exciting. Not terribly exciting at all. What you're looking for is 9. Now, as I'm talking and making all this noise, it sounds funny because usually with the air conditioner on, it drowns everything out that I'm doing, but now I can actually hear the cars. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got more than 9 squares. That's fine. Now what I need to do is make smaller squares. So these actually would work out quite nice. So I'm just going to take that, and I'm going to take a pencil and just roughly mark out. I'm just going to try to make an even border and then see what size would that end up being. Okay, it looks like it's just about 1 3/4 inches. And I'll cut that as well. Again, if they're not perfectly measured, it doesn't matter. You really think little kids are going to want to sit here and measure every single square? No. You just want roughly them roughly the same size. Okay. And that's too small. Do I have 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take some of these, cut these smaller so I have 9, and then I'm not going to waste your time on camera to do this, but I'll just to show you, it's just draw it like that, and just take scissors and just do that. So I want to have 9 small squares and 9 big squares. Okay, so I've got 9 big squares, 9 little squares, and all these little bits and bobs here, these little pieces here, I'm going to hang on to those because I've already thought up of another project for you guys to use all these little papers. What I would like to do with this project is to absolutely have repurpose every single scrap. Now, some people, when like I even did a video on how to create an artist journal out of your weekly newspapers, and some people think I'm getting a little obsessive with recycling, but you know what? If I can keep something out of the landfill, that's fine. And people say, well, it goes into your blue box. But you know what? If I can use it for art, all the better. Okay, so I'm going to hang on to these. Alrighty. Now, as I was cutting these, now, of all the days that I thought would be perfect for doing a video with no air conditioner, everybody's out now cutting their grass, watering their lawns, Joe's working. So I apologize for any distractions. There's a little paper here, though, I'm trying to find the one, where the backing actually came off, because this is actually 2 layers of paper. So when it actually comes down to gluing it, and of course now I won't be able to find it, when it comes down to gluing it, I'll actually add another layer of decoupage medium onto the back of it. Okay, so the background's a little darker than I wanted, but it doesn't matter. So I'm thinking light, dark, then I'll just flip this over just so you can see the contrast. Light, and then the flower will be dark. Okay, but we're going to be painting these too. Now, so I've got my decoupage medium, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It was decoupage, decoupage. But this is from DecoArt. You can find it on their website. Everything that I'm using for this project will be listed at the end of the video, so you're not going to miss anything. Okay, but don't feel that you have to stick to the same things exactly, because all you're doing is copying my design. Use my ideas to inspire you to create your own pieces. So you can use the same supplies, use different supplies, different colors. There's only a couple of guidelines that you need to follow to make sure you get the same effect, but, you know, experiment. So with this, I'm going to, with a small brush, just a 1-inch, this is just a line nickel bristle brush, and I'm going to coat the whole piece. Now, this part here I'm making relatively thick. Usually what I will do, with some collages that I do, I will take the decoupage medium into a little, I've got a little cream cheese container that's been really cleaned, and I dilute it with a little bit of water. I do that with a lot of tissue collage. This here, I want it fairly thicker because the actual cardstock I'm putting down is thicker. Okay, now lay these down. I'm not pressing down yet because I want to be able to move them a little bit, just to lay them out. See, I went too close, so I need to move this over a bit. And that's pretty good. Some of you also may not like the feel of the medium on your fingers. And if that's the case, just put on some rubber gloves. So because I'm going to be making this square, I can actually cut the paper, or if I move it to have an equal border around here, and I can put wording at the bottom. I'm not going to put any wording on there, so I need to determine now which is the best edge. What part do I want to cut off? Well, I kind of like this. I kind of like them both, so I'll just leave it the way it is. Okay, that one's got there, there, here, and here. Okay, then I'm going to take more medium and go right on top. And I'm making this fairly thick. Because this is very, very textured. Oops, it's already dried. Okay. And then once this all dries, it's not going anywhere. Oh, I have a little piece sticking out here. Let's see if I can put that back in there. I forgot to trim that off. Okay, I'm going to put my brush in water. Now, piece of wax paper right on top. If you have freezer paper, that's even better. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm pushing the decoupage medium, and what it's doing is it's kind of spreading out into these interesting patterns, and I can also realign a little bit of these to give it additional texture. And it's burnish. Burnish is putting heavy pressure. And although the medium will dry transparent, you'll have some shine in there, which will have some nice little ridges along the side, almost like marbling. It's all about the effect. Ooh, that one's nice. Now I'll show you a close-up. Okay, so you can see all this nice ridges. Now, when you peel this off, don't peel it off going up. Peel it off this way. If you peel it up this way, then the actual vacuum will pull your cardstock up. Now, see some of the paint that's coming up. This is because of the watercolor medium. It's just like watercolors. Okay. Put that my bin for recycling. This one here shifted a little bit. I'm not going to do anything about it. It shifted, so I'm going to leave it. Now, this here, okay, will take probably about a half an hour to dry, but look at all that. See where right now, where it's white, okay? It's going to dry clear, but still going to have that, depending on how the light hits it when this is all finished, you'll be able to see a nice glimmer reflection. Okay? Now, with this, why don't we take advantage of the drying? You could paint these ahead of time, or you can actually glue these down right now. Okay? What I'm going to do is glue them down now, so I don't have to waste time. Again, if you want to paint these first, that's fine. Okay, just a little bit. Now, this here is a little bit dampened. Okay, I'm going to put the square on top. And the reason why I like painting these when everything is assembled is because accidents will happen. I'll get paints, so I'll get paint where it doesn't belong, and it just gives me, whoopsie, it just gives me another effect. I like stuff that's more random than anything else. Oopsie, everything's drying so quickly. I'll have to burnish this again because the actual stock that's on here is very, very thick. We're going to be applying a final layer on top of the entire design, so don't worry. When we seal it, it's not going anywhere. There we go. Oops, move that down a little bit. Now, because this decoupage is such a good sealer, if you get any in your fingers, it's non-toxic. Okay, just wash your hands right away because you'll get that gluey feel on it. There we go. I'm looking out the window and the sky's getting kind of dark, so I want to try to get this finished before the storm comes in, or if there's going to be any rain. I don't know. There we go. Okay, put that back in water. I'm going to close this up. And I'm going to grab another piece of wax paper and burnish that again. Ooh, I love the goo that's coming out of that. If I was doing more of a layered collage, I would use this much thinner. But because this piece is so textured, I'm using the actual decoupage medium to create additional texture as well. The transparent layers of texture. Now, if you have freezer paper, you could actually put freezer paper, then put books on top and let it dry overnight and it won't stick. Wax paper, contrary to popular belief, is not totally waterproof. After a while, this will actually get damp. I can actually feel it being damp. It helps, especially when you've painted in your artist journal, that it keeps your pages from sticking together. But as you peel it off, some of the wax, I think, comes off as well. Oh, I love that piece that's coming out there. That's burnished quite nicely. Oh, I can just feel the texture. Oops, this one's come up a little bit. And even more paint is coming up now. Oh, yummy. Look at that. When we glaze the paint over, you're going to have some beautiful textures on there. Now again, it's going to clear dry. So I'm going to come back in about a half an hour, and then we'll get started painting all these squares. Okay, we're back. So now I've got this, it's not 100% dry, but it's dry enough to work. When you're working with mixed media paper, it absorbs an awful lot of water, but now it's totally workable. If you let it dry overnight, it would guarantee that it'd be dry. So over on this side, I put a little bit of Traditions glazing medium. That'll help thin down, or make, sorry, not thin down, but make paint transparent. And now I'm going to darken the first panel here, and I'm going to put transparent red iron oxide. Love that. And I'm going to use a number 10 flat brush. I'm just going to get some paper towel, dampen a little bit of water, pick up a little bit of glazing medium, and just put the 2. It doesn't matter if it's the same depth. And I'm just going to put that over. I got a little bit on the actual background. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And just gonna put this around the edges. Now with this here, the glazing medium helps make the paint more transparent without breaking down the strength of the paint. If you use too much water, you actually break down the strength of the paint, regardless of what paint you use. Think if you were just taking pigment, which is, if you think of it, it's like pastel powder. Just think you're taking pigment and mixing it in with water. It will not adhere to your surface. Paint, acrylics and watercolors have binders in them, which is the glue that holds everything together. Oils, same thing. There we go. See, I'm just putting this. You notice I'm not going all crazy, making sure that each is, fully opaque. And I like the idea that some parts are a little bit more opaque than the other. Like here, that's really intense. That's a little too intense. If I were to leave that alone, but I can come back and put a bit more. What I like is that because of the textured paper, I can come over and it really intensifies the blocks where the wrinkles are in the paper. It really intensifies it. Okay, see that? Let's see. This one here. See, I like that look. Okay. Alright, and we'll do this one. And you can basically use any color you want. I love transparent red iron oxide just because it is so intense, yet is a very, very transparent pigment. And by using glazing medium, it makes it even more transparent. That way you can see everything happening underneath. When I do pieces like this, I try to avoid using white, titanium white, because it will make everything so opaque. I love glazing. I do a lot of my oil paintings that I do, my formal pet portrait art, I will do with glazing, layers and layers of oils. And my people paintings too. Let's see, I'll go over here. I do it with layers. I'll work my initial study in black and white to get my values set, and then I'll glaze. Gives it almost like a vintage look. So I'm just kind of going over some areas, deepening some spots here, especially where there's a lot of wrinkles. I like really intensifying the wrinkles. Okay, so that's, well, let me just do this one here. So that's probably where I'm going to leave that part at. Okay, and now we can start working the center. Now the center I'm going to make kind of like a green, just for the flowers. So I'm going to take phthalo green on the blue side, which is also transparent. I'm only going to use a little bit, and then Hansa yellow light, which is semi-transparent. These will make a very, very intense green, and at the same time I can add in a little bit of transparent red iron oxide to knock down the intensity. Okay, I'll get my trusty palette knife here and just mix these two together. So I'll probably about 3 parts Hansa yellow light to 1 part phthalo green. Okay, knock in a little bit of transparent red iron oxide, which will neutralize the intensity. I'll have to test this first because I still think that's a little too intense for me. So we'll try here, and I'm going to now go in. Oh, how can I try with my small brush too? A little bit of glazing medium, a little bit of green. Oh, actually that's perfect. Okay, so I'm going into the glazing medium first, then picking up a little bit of green and just going over. I'm being pretty rough about it. What you want to do though is make sure that you do have that glazing medium in your brush, because that way if you happen to make a mistake, you know, too much green or not enough green, like something like this, you can always take a paper towel and kind of go over it to wipe it off. If you used just pure paint on that, you wouldn't be able to wipe some of it off. So glazing medium and then a little bit of green. Each time you load your brush, make sure you got glazing medium in there. But it's really easy to forget. And this will be the backdrop for the flowers. A bit more green there. And you don't have to make them all the same intensity. You can make some light, some dark. Now this one here is a bit too much. I'm going to get a baby wipe. And so I can just wipe a little bit of that off. Okay, a little bit of glazing medium. Use leftover paint in my brush. I'm going to put a little bit more there. Don't forget we're painting flowers on top of these. Okay, glazing medium. Now I was initially going to do this with a foam brush or even a large 1-inch wash brush, but it would make too much of an even application of paint. I like the roughness, the blockiness, the brush strokes. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to go back over it. I'm kind of working in a clockwise motion or counterclockwise, just rotating my piece. And I'm just going to go around and just kind of put a little bit more paint where I think it's needed. Won't necessarily be everywhere. I just really want to work over the areas that have a lot of texture. Okay, and this one here. Flatten the brush and then work opposite And then just lightly pick that up. Oh, I got a little bit on the background, which doesn't really matter, but baby wipe will wipe it up. The glazing medium is a godsend when it comes to doing a project like this. Okay, so now that I have this all set, you can work on this wet on wet with the flour, but I'm going to let this dry for a bit. It'll only take about 5 minutes, which will give me enough time to bring out my next set of paints. And then I'm going to do some with the actual Traditions paints. What I really love to do is working with the paper effects in little squeeze bottles. I'm going to do some of the flowers like that as well. For brushes, I'm going to, I've got a filbert, a round, a bright, or a shader, and a little liner. But the shader one I don't think I'm going to need to use because I already have the flat on the go. So I'm going to put the shader away. Okay, so a round brush, a filbert brush, and a liner brush. That's all you'll need. And then your flat if you need to actually come back in and make some adjustments. But make sure you rinse the paint out in your water bucket if you're going to take a break from painting. Okay, so I'm going to leave this, but I'm going to leave my paint on the palette. Now, this one here with paint might start to tack up a little bit. I'm just going to mist with a little bit of water, okay, and on a regular basis so a skin doesn't form on it. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry now. Okay. I'm going to, as I'm looking at this and the colors are drying, I'm starting to get other ideas. And that's the problem when I work with stuff like this, is that ideas develop as I'm working to think of, okay, this would be better, or this would be better. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick on my original plan for this, and then just do another project with the ideas that develop. And what I did is, off camera, I kind of wrote down some notes of what I wanted to do. So what I thought I would do is with the paper effects, they come in a nice little tube and they're great for writing. I'm going to put some flowers in here. I'm just going to shake this. And off the palette, or off the surface, I'm just going to squeeze a bit just to make sure the paint is flowing. Okay. Now when you're doing this, I'm going to do different designs, but just to show you how we're going to do one. And with this, basically, you squeeze gently, and I'm just going to, and sometimes it'll come out thicker, sometimes it'll come out thinner, depends on how you, like so. Okay, then I'll come down to this one here, and this one here I'm going to make a circle with kind of like soft edges. Okay. And then I'll come over on this side in the corner, and I'll do it the same as, so basically I'm making the four corners opposite the same. Okay, I'll show you in a sec. This is a great project for kids. And then in this corner, the fancy flower. Whoops. Okay, so this skipped a bit, so all I'm going to do is fill that in. Okay, and then what you end up with is you've got your four corners. So two fancy flowers here and two soft flowers here. Okay, so I'm going to cap this. I have actually sketched out probably about 10 different projects like this, which would be kind of cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different color. So if I just take pink, and same thing now with the pink, and with the pink I'm just going to make circles. Let's see, do I want to make circles or do I want to make dots? I think, no, I'm going to make dots like this. Okay. Like so. I'm going to cap that one. Then I'm going to go to metallic copper. So just different colors. And oh, that one's plugged up. The nice thing with these things here, they come with little tools that you can actually you can actually unplug. You can little pin that comes inside, and you can just unplug it. I love the copper. This now, because we're not going to actually be manipulating this, this is best if it's left to dry overnight. And in a journal, if you're doing this in a journal, make sure you leave it open flat, because you don't want the this to get squished. And then now what I'm going to take is I'm going to take gold, vintage gold. Again, all these supplies will be in at the end of the video, so you're not going to lose out on anything. And just dot that one in there. I do a lot of scripting with these tools here. I'm just going to shake that. And my bottle's running out. Okay, there's one there. Cap that. And the next one I'm going to use will be silver. And just dot that. Doesn't have to be even. You just want to get some shapes. And this piece is so textured. I actually have students that say when the classes that they take from me that includes a lot of texture, they find it very, very therapeutic, because you can actually touch the piece. Okay, so now we're going to do, while this dries, no wasting time, I'm going to take some metallic, the dazzling metallic. This one here is Venetian gold. I want to add a little bit of glam to the outside. So I'm just going to pour that on the palette. And I'm going to take the same brush that I was using to actually paint this. Now, the metallic paint is transparent. And I'm just putting one layer across, reloading my brush at each side, just to make sure that I got good coverage. I'll still be able to see the intense transparent red iron oxide underneath, and I will also still be able to see the texture from the folds in the paper. Okay. Doesn't need to be perfectly even. Just make sure that all four sides do have a layer of paint. And I have to think about what I want to do for the center. Where am I? Here. I think for the center, I'm going to use the pewter or the black dazzling metallics. I just kind of have to think of what I want to do for the flower. There we go. As you can see, this is a really, really fun project for kids. Okay, I'm going to come in here. And let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to use the black pearl. And for a flower, oh no, let's make a daisy. A white pearl. Let's make a daisy. And we'll squeeze and lift. Squeeze and lift. It's going to be a funny looking daisy. You might not be able to see this too well. I'll get a close-up in a sec. Alright. Now, every time I finish using these, I tap them, and that brings the paint back down into the tube. And then when you cap it, there's a little cap inside here. Make sure that goes right over the nozzle, and that keeps the keeps any air from entering the nozzle. Okay, so this is what I have so far. Okay. They're actually quite cute. That's an odd looking flower. Okay. Now, if I want to put something in the middle, again, came up with a different idea for what I wanted to do. Just before this, I thought, no, I'm going to save that for another project. Now, for inside, what you can do is I'm going to take, let's see, I'm going to take, what color do I want to do this? I'm going to use the green. I'm going to use the green that I used in here, and I'm going to take the green, I'm going to put a little bit of that gold in it, that dazzling metallic gold, a little bit more of the transparent red iron oxide to make it nice and dark. So the green transparent mixture, a little bit of transparent red iron oxide, and a little bit of this Venetian gold just to give it a little bit of shine. Okay, and I'm just going to roughly, carefully tap in the center. Make sure you don't touch any of the paint that's here. Just tapping, because we're still going to put more inside. I'm going to go into the green now. And I'm just going to tap a little bit of just the actual green mix. Okay. And now we're at it, I'm going to just get, where did it go? Some Hansa Yellow Medium. Pour that onto my palette, just pure. Okay. I'm going to take my liner brush, and I'm just going to pick some of that up and just kind of lay it. And I could probably get about, I'm going to get 3, then I'll have to rinse my brush. Okay. And all I'm doing is I'm adding texture to the middle. For everything we've done so far can be done with, the only thing is, cutting the paper and using scissors, and that needs supervision. Gonna lay that there. And lay that here. Oh, good texture. Okay. And now what we can do is the exact same color that's on the outside, we're going to dot on the inside. Just a dot. I'm just going to get that paint going. I hope I have enough paint for another project. Okay, so a dot here. You're not covering the acrylics that you just put down. Okay, you're not covering that up, but you can tap these now, put them aside. Did I do a gold flower? Oh, yes, I did. Tap there. So then when I'm done, I'm tapping it like this, tube side up, and cap that. Okay, the copper. And the pink. The pink is very, very fluid. And the silver. Now, these are also starting to level out now, which makes the shapes even nicer. And we have white. Whoops, the white's kind of big. We lost a little bit of contrast there. We lost a little bit of contrast. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to see if I can lay a little bit of yellow. And then a little bit of green, very carefully. Okay, just a little bit. It didn't quite work, but that's okay. The white is just leveling out a lot. So there we go. Those are really, really cute. So now you got to think, okay, well, is there something else that you can do now? Well, what I like to do is I'm going to take some black pearl, and to make it look like they're actually almost like little metal plates that are onto a board. And you got to be careful when doing this. I'm going to put, just unplugging my piece here. I'm going to put little dots in each corner to make it look like a little metal plate. Okay, I'm going to do this fairly quickly. And now I just had another idea. I'm going to try to keep it in my brain. There we go. And you can do this with any color you want. I should be going a little bit slower, but limited on time on video. You know, when you've got somebody waving at you to speed up the time. There we go. There we are. And I can come in and I can actually paint those with a little bit of silver paint, but I'm going to kind of leave that the way it is. So look at that. Isn't that cute? And then what you would do with this is that you just basically, when this is all dry, I would let this dry overnight. And then when it's finished drying, then you can measure if you want and then just trim the edge. And then you can actually mount this onto, let's say, a piece of masonite, or just put it into a glassless picture frame. But it creates, let's see if I can turn this on an angle, but look at the texture. You can actually see the texture of the paint. See that? The actual texture of the paint. And this makes for a beautiful piece, great for kids to play with. Adults, teens, it doesn't matter. What you can do too is, if you, because I left the larger gap here, you can actually write something here if you want. Another alternative to this, if you don't have any if you don't have any multimedia paper like this, take a piece of masonite, prime it with 2 to 3 layers of gesso. Okay, use a roller, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. You can have your brush stroke sewing. That's for another project. So just 2 to 3 coats of gesso, and then you can do the scraping technique like this right on the masonite. And because not everybody can get multimedia or mixed media paper. Not everybody can get it, so you can use masonite. You can canvas might be a bit flimsy for that. What you want to do is, as you scrape the paint and stuff like that, your piece gets stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. So just remember, if you're going to put this into a frame, do not put glass on top of this, because you'll smush out. Because this is pliable. Okay, the one nice thing about these products is that they're very flexible, and if they weren't flexible, they would crack. Okay, they're very, very flexible. So you can put it on, use this piece here is your masonite. You can even crinkle tissue on it. Really, the ideas you can come with are unlimited. But this is one nice, fun little project by just using the various paper effects, paints, some Traditions paints for the color, the dazzling metallics to glam up the sides, make it look like it's fastened onto a plate. And again, I'm going to put all the supplies at the end of the video, so you're not going to lose out on anything. Let it dry overnight and it'll be finished. So I hope that you enjoyed this project, and you'll have to join me next time, because now I've come up with about a gazillion other projects based on doing a mosaic design. Stay inspired.